Hi, I'm Mark Mattioli, and welcome to another reading of my novel Boston Accent. Boston Accent is available on Amazon.com. And quick disclaimer, this book does contain adult subject matter. It is not suitable for children. Okay, let's get right to it. Let's pick up where we left off. I don't have this queued up. There we go. We're starting a new chapter, Chapter 6, College. It was fall 1975, and I was off to college, not only to earn a degree, but to meet new people and have some new life experiences. I was excited. My parents had footed the bill with the understanding that 2 years was all they could afford. Living on campus was out of the question. I could earn an associate's degree, and anything after that I would have to pay for myself by working days, going to school nights, or vice versa. I applied and was accepted to a junior college in Boston that had a communications program offering TV and radio production, quadraphonic stereo recording as majors, along with classes like business law and music appreciation as minors. These are all subjects I had great interest in, and I felt confident that with my creativity, I would do well. I had cousins living in Boston just 2 miles from the school, and my mom made arrangements with her sister Jen for me to stay there. Jen was living in a low-income apartment with my 3 younger cousins, including Brentley, whom I gave a mud shampoo when we were very little. Jen has been divorced for 10 years and is now dating a firefighter that is 20 years her senior. My mother pays Jen monthly rent for me to stay there, and the rent includes meals on the weekends only, for an additional $75 a month cost to my mother. I never eat there. Once I make friends at school, I get invites to stay in dorm rooms and only return to the apartment to get a change of clothes. I received a weekly allowance from my mom for food and money for public transportation, as I don't have a car. But I usually walk the 4 miles round trip to school to save money. My allowance totaled $35 a week, and even in 1975, that wasn't a lot. I had to strategically ration my funds so I could eat 1 meal a day, buy cigarettes, and have a beer. If I made a pack of smokes last 2 or 3 days, and I only bought a single can of beer a day, I would still have a little money left to eat on the weekend. Unfortunately, I do a whole lot more drinking than eating, which affects my grades and my health, not to mention my relationship with school security and administration. My fellow students take care of me on the weekend to see that I have a place to sleep, and I count on the occasional visits from friends at home to treat me to dinner. Without all the good friends I had in college, I surely would have to have quit drinking in order to avoid starving to death. This was the first time in my life that I was to learn about priorities. I knew I'd learn about something in college. One thing I always had a problem with, as far back as I can remember, is my name. It's not that it's an unattractive name. I just felt it was too common and a little boring. So I found myself using an alias as far back as nursery school. When I was 4, I thought the most exciting person in the world was Choo Choo Charlie. Choo Choo Charlie was an engineer, the good and plenty engineer. So I started introducing myself as Charlie. At nursery school, the teachers called me by my given name, but to the kids and my bus driver, I was Charlie. One day, my grandmother is meeting me at the bus stop, and as I exit the bus, she sees the kids hanging out the bus window yelling, "Bye, Charlie!" And she asks the driver, "Why are these kids calling him Charlie?" The driver says, "Because it's his name." "It's not his name," my grandmother barks at him. "Well, he told everyone his name is Charlie," the driver replies, shrugging his shoulders. My grandmother grabs me by the arm, drags me up to the house, and the whole time she's asking me, "What's wrong with you? Are you ashamed of your name?" All I can say is, I like Choo Choo Charlie. I was to remember that day during our freshman election with the Borges-Williams hoax, and I think I received additional enjoyment from Borges thanks to Charlie. For those of you who don't know what the bogus Weems hoax is, you're going to have to go back and catch an earlier reading. That was a good reading. Bogus Weems. Very important. It's key. Key. It's 14 years later, and as I'm walking down Com Ave, I spot a billboard that reads Channel 56, Kaiser Broadcasting, just outside Kenmore Square. I put the two of them together, and I come up with the Kenmore Kaiser. And on that day, I was reborn. For the next 2 years, while I was a student at the school, I introduced myself as Kenmore Kaiser. And to my friends at school, I'm simply known as the Kaiser. When my friends from home come to visit and they hear the name change, it doesn't faze them a bit. They just shake their heads. My very first day of school, I meet a guy at registration from New Jersey who calls himself Slick. We end up in a bar in Kenmore Square called the Raskella. This place was a 3-story club that had punk rock in the basement, jazz upstairs, and a jukebox on the first level, which is the only floor open during the day. They sold 50-cent drafts, and that fit right in with my budget, as long as I didn't tip. Slick was to become one of my 2 closest friends in college, and I spent most of the weekends crashed on the floor of his dorm room. The only thing that Slick and I didn't agree on was music, and we fought about that all the time. Bruce Springsteen was huge in 1975. If you came from New Jersey, you thought he was God. I couldn't stand his style of music, and neither could any of my friends from home. So kicking back in Slick's room, listening to music could be painful. At this time in my life, I felt the 3 greatest rock bands in the world were, because I could never narrow it down to one, were Led Zeppelin, The Who, and Aerosmith. And the Stones they were close to. Now with this writing, I have easily been to over 300 concerts, from opera to punk and everything in between, including country. But at the age of 18, I was a hardcore rocker. Boston in the 70s was an excellent place to live for live music. Still is. There were little clubs spread out within walking distance of each other all over the city. Not to mention your bigger venues, the Music Hall, the Orpheum, and of course the Boston Garden, where although the acoustics were horrible, they booked supergroups. I spent many weekends during college either in the club specifically for the music or trying to meet women. It proved very much to be a losing battle for the latter, as the kind of music I liked wasn't as popular with the ladies as disco. There was a disco complex in Kenmore Square right across the street from the Raskella, with 3 clubs that didn't play a lick of live music, not to mention rock and roll, but they were packed with women. One night, sitting in the Rat, as we called it, listening to some not very good, loud as hell punk band, and taking a head count of there not being one woman in the club, I said to my companions, "Let's go across the street." After just looking at me with blank stares, they said, "Disco? Are you crazy?" And I said, "Not disco, women." So off we went to bravely go where no rockers had gone before. There were 3 clubs to choose from. Oh boy! Lucifer's, Celebration, and Narcissus. So we chose Lucifer's for obvious reasons. Now, this is 2 years before the release of Saturday Night Fever, but walking in that club was right out of the movie. There was a huge dance floor in the center of the club with flashing lights, not only coming from the ceiling, but coming up from the floor. The music was deafening, and we had to scream to hear each other. I thought maybe we could just blend in with the crowd so we could talk to girls, but I was dreaming. At the time, I was wearing my hair in a long ponytail halfway down my back. I was wearing my trademark black biker-style leather jacket, blue jeans, and work boots. My companions were dressed similar. The way everyone stared at us, you would have thought we were naked. At the same time, we were staring at them, and I was beginning to feel sick to my stomach. The guys were wearing dress shoes with heels on them, and leisure suits, and they had these horrible lead haircuts caked in hairspray. There seemed to be an ugly shirt contest going on, as every shirt we saw got worse and worse, with these god-awful bright colors, huge collars, and the shirt unbuttoned halfway down the chest to show off a collection of gold chains. We gathered in a corner, and one of my buddies yelled in my ear, "We don't belong here." I said, "Hold on, we're here to meet girls." The place was packed with girls, but the way they dressed was a real turnoff, with their pantsuits and dresses that looked like they had just come from a wedding. Not the typical girls any of us had ever talked to in a club, but I was determined, so off I went to prove to my companions that this was doable. I was not only at a time in my life where I was reasonably confident with women, but I was also considered a pretty competent dancer. I approached my first group of women and asked the most attractive one, who seemed to be the leader, "Would you like to dance?" She looked me up and down, looked at her friends, rolled her eyes, and said no. By the way she reacted, you would have thought I'd asked her to donate a kidney. So I said to myself, okay, fine. This is going to be a little tougher than I thought. I decided to find someone that might have a little lower opinion of herself, and if she was alone while her friend danced, even better. I found that girl and made my approach off to her side so I could catch her off guard before she had time to size up my appearance. I placed my hand on the small of her back and just nodded to the dance floor, and she smiled and headed to the floor. I looked back at my buddies to see their reaction, but I wasn't getting any thumbs up. They looked very concerned. We got out on the dance floor, and my partner began swinging her arms up in the air, apparently doing some dance step that was appropriate for that song. I began to look around, and others on the dance floor were making the same motions, guys and girls. I said to myself, screw that. I'm not dancing like that. Even if my friends weren't watching, and they are, I wouldn't dance like that. It was thankfully a fast song, and I just began to interpret the song the way I perceived it, using my own moves. And that's when I made a really big scene. I may have gone a little overboard, but I decided to have fun with the moment. I just started doing this very aggressive dance with my partner by dancing very close to her from behind. I placed my hands on her hips, began making thrusting motions, which she couldn't see. But as I looked around, a lot of people were watching me, and I was getting dirty looks. That's when I looked at my friends, and they were cracking up and clapping their hands, which just encouraged me to take it up another notch. I threw a kick over my head, which is one of my rocker dance floor trademarks, sort of a cross between Mikhail Baryshnikov and Bruce Lee, and I just missed a disco boy who was dancing next to me. It was then that our fellow dancers backed off and gave us a lot of room. My partner turned to face me, and I moved as close to her as I could without touching her. I slowly lowered myself down to the dance floor with my face inches from first her breasts and then her crotch, all the while never breaking eye contact with her as I rose up again, making thrusting motions while licking my lips. My dance partner ran from the floor and disappeared into the ladies' room, never to be seen again. I took one more look at the crowd that was eyeballing me, bowed, and walked over to my friends as I gestured to the dance floor. Next! But no one was willing to follow that act, and we headed for the door and back to the rat and our own kind. That's the end of the reading for today. I hope you liked that little bit. We'll pick it up again tomorrow, God willing. My name is Mark Mattioli. The book is Boston Accent, available on Amazon.com. Ciao.